Welcome to the Knowledge for Men show. Your life will never be the same.
Your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development.
I want to die empty of regret. I want to die empty of my best work. We don't understand who we are. Instead, we're living out somebody else's narrative.
What one man can do, another man can do. If it's been done, it can be done again.
Being yourself and being your truest, most authentic self in every moment. If it scares you or makes you a little afraid, do it. Follow your heart and your gut.
The first stage, I think, is finding you, like finding out who I am today.
Stuff will not work. You will have things that fail. Success is when you're a happy, fulfilled person. How do you define success?
It's your life, and you are the creator of the movie script that is your life story.
Do you ever feel like you're doing the journey alone? Have you ever felt like that you just need someone to talk to, someone who could bring some perspective into your world? Or maybe you're not the type of person who learns from watching video courses or reading books, and you just want to talk with someone specifically about your challenges and how to break through them. I want to introduce you to the High Performance Men's Coaching Program. It's an intensive coaching experience designed to unlock a man's full potential in his life, business, and relationships. Over this past year, I've brought together and trained some of the best coaches in the world to help men step up, stop playing small, and become the strongest versions of themselves. Learn more about High Performance Men's Coaching at kfmcoach.com. Again, that's kfmcoach.com. You are not alone, and we are here to cut through the crap, hold you accountable, and challenge you so that you can make your dreams become a reality. Go to kfmcoach.com to learn more and apply. All right, guys, welcome to the show. I'm here with Gary John Bishop, the author of Unfuck Yourself. Get out of your head and into your life. I thought this was a very interesting title and a much needed conversation today. So I want to welcome Gary to the show.
Thanks for having me, Andrew. It's great to be with you.
Alrighty, let's dive right in. What kind of success quote or favorite saying do you have for us? Something that you've lived by, perhaps something from the book?
Yeah, so I'm arrogant enough to use one of my own. So the quote that I live by is, you have the life you're willing to put up with. And I indulge myself in that quote daily, sometimes dozens of times a day.
Let's break that down. You have the life you're willing to put up with.
Yes.
What are some examples of this so people can relate?
Yeah, so human beings have like a tremendous capacity for making things okay that they're fundamentally not okay with. And they put up with them. They tolerate them to the degree that they just shrug their shoulders and then they just kind of explain it like, well, that's just how it is. So, if you're carrying 10 pounds more than you should be, you're putting up with that. If you're spending money that you shouldn't be spending, you're putting up with that. If you're in a relationship and you know that it's just not working, that it's just fundamentally not working, you're putting up with that. Your job, your love or lack thereof in your life, the current state of all your relationships, if you look around in your life, you'll see there's a tremendous amount of BS you're putting up with and tolerating and making yourself okay with.
Yeah. Why do we put up with things that are causing us pain and potentially suffering?
Yeah. The alternative is just too uncertain. As human beings, we're addicted to certainty. I talk about it in the book, but it's amazing. Like the amount of people who would tell you they're unhappy, and you say to them, "Well, why don't you make the changes?" And they'll say, "I can't," and then they'll come out with a litany of reasons why they can't, and that is, they actually put more effort into keeping one foot nailed to the floor than finally freeing themselves from that which they say they can't tolerate.
They're putting more effort into staying the same rather than putting effort into making the change and embracing the uncertainty, you're saying.
Right. And as human beings, as we get older, that uncertainty becomes less and less and less and less appealing. So look, if you're listening to this right now and you're 22, you're still pretty much embracing the future and the uncertainty of it and what could come. That changes when you get to 32. And 36, and 38, and 42. And even though, again, at 22, you might be saying, well, that won't happen to me. But anybody who's been 22 would tell you that they were telling themselves things at 22 that everything changed by the time they had 34 or 35. So as we age, we get less and less open to the idea of real and significant change in our lives.
That's interesting. So we put up with more quote unquote shit that we don't like in our life as we get older, you're saying here.
Yeah, we make it okay. We just make it okay. And look, I'm not just pulling this out. I mean, if you actually observe human beings, if you talk to somebody who, for instance, is on death row, if you ask them what it's like day to day, they'll pretty much tell you it's okay. They'll tell you, well, you get to eat and we exercise, and I know I'm going to die in here, but you don't think of that most of the time. I mean, for the most part, I read books and I watch television. I mean, they will make okay that they're on death row.
Yeah. In that situation, what else can they do, though? The death row situation is he's locked up. Yeah.
Well, I think you want to get, if you're a listener to this right now, I'm presuming most of them aren't on death row.
Yeah. But this is not the Death Row podcast, that's for sure.
Yeah. Coming live from the state penitentiary. No, I invite your listeners to consider their equivalent. Mm-hmm. So again, I've been into this whole kind of personal growth game for about a dozen years or so. And when I say into it, I mean, it's my life's work. Right. I mean, the fascination's always been there, but it's what I do and who I am. And if I look back in my life, I'll see I have this, and I've had, and I'm constantly still interrupting my tolerance for what doesn't work, for complete unworkability. I just make that, oh, well, it's fine. And it's a challenge to be that one person in life who won't tolerate it. And I don't mean indignant intoleration. I don't mean you're angry or pissy about it or something.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at certain things and you're like, I'm just not going to keep living this way. This doesn't work. So one area for me, I'll give you a great example for me was a number of years ago was my financial status. So I looked at my income and I thought, how come my money always seems to top out at a certain number? How come I'm not one of those guys? Right, that makes so much money they don't even know when money's going into the bank account.
Yeah,
and I really confronted something I'd spent 30-something years of my life with just being okay with it. I mean, I would say I want more money, but I wasn't changing my life for it until I eventually just said, I'm not tolerating this anymore. Actually, what I'm out to do is start to accrue legitimate wealth. And as soon as I made that my business, this is what I'm making. This is my game. I'm going to accrue legitimate wealth, a personal game, not my game in the world, but a personal game.
Okay.
And then when I looked at that, I'm I started to see all the areas where I'm just not organized around having money. I'm just not. I'm more organized around how to get rid of it.
You're good at spending. You got all kinds of habits for spending. And
and whole emotional states and behavioral processes that I tolerate, And as I started to interrupt him, which was really, really challenging, by the way, but as I started to interrupt him, I started to realize there was absolutely no reason in the world why I couldn't have money. It was just one of these things that I'd told myself long, long ago and tolerated.
Yeah. So the book here, Unfuck Yourself, that's the title. It's to get out of your head and into your life. So to unfuck yourself, is it to stop settling in your life and putting up with bullshit?
Yeah. I think you've got to first come to terms with to realize that you've fucked yourself.
You have done it. So there's a level of responsibility in your title. You did this to yourself.
Yeah, well, you see, the deal, I'm a bit of an existentialist at heart. You can't be an existentialist if you don't embrace the idea that you're responsible. The alternative, by the way, to your being responsible is horrific, right? Now, if you give that some thought, the alternative to my being responsible is horrific. What does this Scottish guy mean? This Scottish guy means then that somebody else is on the hook for your life and how it goes.
Yeah.
Which is a horrific thought to me. I don't want to give anybody, a percentage point of a percentage of responsibility for my existence. I bring everything in-house. Why? Because that's the stuff that I can impact.
Right.
So you have to realize that you've screwed yourself. Now, in what way, Mr. Fancy Talking Scottish man, have I screwed myself? You're in a constant dialogue with yourself. So once had somebody asked me, is this book about our self-limiting beliefs? And the question I asked the person was, tell me one of your self-limiting beliefs. And they couldn't tell me one. And the reason why you can't tell me one is because you are one. You're a walking, talking, self-limiting belief. And the minute you recognize something called a self-limiting belief as a self-limiting belief, it's no longer a self-limiting belief because you don't believe it anymore. So everything you say to yourself, every action you're taking is measured against some outcome that either consciously or otherwise you have in mind. So another way to say it is everything you're doing in life, every date you've ever been on, every job you've ever had, every task you've ever undertaken, every project, everything you ever did at school was measured against what you thought you could do. And what you think you can do is of no interest to me as somebody who does what I do. I'm way more interested in what you think you can't do, because in that domain is where your true potential exists. It's not in what you think you can accomplish, it's in what you think you can't accomplish. So I invite people to take on the idea that every day of your life, you're talking yourself into a limit.
And we're doing that to stay safe, I'm assuming.
Yeah, well, I mean, as human beings, even the people that say they take risks, they're not really risks for them. So the guy or the woman that jumps out of airplanes, they don't feel like they're risking it all. For them, it seems like, I'll be fine. And you can boil that all the way down to like telling somebody you love them or you forgive them. I mean, to me, that's way more riskier than jumping out of an airplane. And because you're exposed to something, you're exposed to being seen in a certain way or a certain light. And we avoid that because we are, again, both consciously and otherwise, shaping the way that people see us. So taking big risks and exposing yourself is probably the single most uncomfortable thing you'd ever do as a human being. That is revealing something about yourself that to this point you have not done.
Being vulnerable.
Oh, well, again, I'm so like, I'm in the self-help category, Andrew,
Yep.
And I'm like the kind of anti-self-help guy, because I don't think we really investigate. I don't think we really think about a lot of what's getting said in this category. I'm more like the wake the fuck up guy, But if you think of this term, like, okay, being vulnerable, like, what is it? People throw that around like a bumper sticker, like, be courageous, But you have to look at, like, well, for anybody listening to this right now, what would it look like for you to be vulnerable? Like, what would you be saying? And who would you be saying it to? And how would you act when you're being vulnerable? And if you were saying those things and acting that way, how would that change your life? Like, how would it change the way people see you? How would it interrupt the drift of who you've become? How would it start to shape a new future for you if you suddenly took on for yourself, I'm going to be vulnerable. Like, I'm really going. And it's one thing to be vulnerable with people that it's a little easier to deal with, like, your partner or something, like, to say, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But to walk into work and say to your boss, listen, I've been mailing it in for 3 weeks here, pretending, blaming everybody else. And do you know what the reality is? I have not been doing what you're paying me to do. And I apologize for that. And I take responsibility for that. And I want you to know I'm all in here. You got me. I'm in. I'm sick of blaming everybody and everything else for how my life's going. I'm taking over. I mean, if you're a boss, that's like music to your freaking ears. I mean, you're a bit pissy because they haven't done anything for 3 weeks, but still, somebody's being authentic and being vulnerable and owning themselves. And it really is like a breath of fresh air,
Yeah,
So
it's real.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a big stand for that,
Yeah. I think real conversations are, we know when they're happening. And
right.
I think we as humans just connect, and we want to hear that real conversation, and we respect when someone starts, because I think that's the hardest part is right. Starting the real conversation, like opening that door into something that's real, whether it be at work or in your love life or with a friend or a family member. But I think we all crave real conversation.
Yeah, see, you've just touched on something there really powerful, Andrew. I mean, it's just such a great observation of yours, but I call it being authentic, okay? Like being an authentic human being. Now, you'll hear that getting thrown about social media like yesterday's news, right? Like, be your authentic self and all this bullshit. Most people, when they hear that, they think it means give people a piece of your mind, right? They think it means candor, like just say how you feel.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not an advocate of that. Some of the shit that's on your mind, you should keep it there. Right? That would be anything you say that diminishes another. That's not authenticity. That's called being an asshole. Authenticity is when you talk about you, what you're dealing with, what it's like for you, but not like a big victim from a place of like, you know what, I'm going to own that I've been resentful. I'm going to own that I've been upset with somebody and blaming them. And I'm going to take ownership of my upsets. I'm going to stop blaming this upset in them. And I'm going to tell them that I've been doing it. Now, I know some people are like, oh my God, how could you even? Yeah, I mean, you tend to stick out a little bit when you're that kind of human being. But you know what? Just like you pointed to, when you are authentic with another human being, it opens up the floodgates. Often you find that the other people in your life join you.
Yeah.
Like they want to be part of that dialogue. They want to say stuff like, you know, it's really great you're saying that. You know, I can see myself where I'm like that too. In those moments, there's true connection with human beings at a very human level. Now, I know you've probably got listeners who say, well, I work in a really professional environment and you can't talk that way and you can't. Well, you know what? Here's the news. I mean, I work with a lot of big companies and these days are coming, like it's coming down the pike. Like people are seeing the importance and the significance of being authentic. Because the alternative is withholding and resenting and hunkering down and blaming and pointing the finger and making wrong. So it's just a really powerful place to start. You start looking in the mirror, start dealing with yourself, because when you finally get truthful with you about why your life is the way it is, you've now got the door open to making some real change, some real and significant change.
Mm-hmm. So blaming others is you're fucking yourself.
Oh, I mean, yeah. I mean, but you're literally giving your power away. You're literally saying, I'm this way because of you.
Yeah.
Now, you got to get like the significant. That's not insignificant. That's a big deal. Like, you know, the popular thing of that, you know, certainly the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s was, yeah, your parents fucked you. Which just gave people carte blanche to just explain their lives away, you know? Like, yeah, my dad was an asshole. He beat me every day for 12 years. Now, there's people that happened, and that's freaking tough to deal with, you know, and it's very, very challenging. But at some point, you need to say, okay, now what? Like, am I going to keep explaining my life by pointing to that? Both good and bad. Because even by saying, well, I'm a better person for it, you know, the bullshit lives on. At some point, you got to say, it's over. I'm done. I'm going to start living my life as some kind of, you know, like real and authentic self-expressed human being right now, regardless of my past. And then you'll have people who say, well, that's hard. And right there, they start building a case for why they can't. And the thing that people need to wake up to, and I really mean this isn't arrogant, you know, I really mean this like in a very powerful way. You need to wake up to somebody somewhere has dealt with what you're dealing with in a way that empowers them and has them be responsible for where their life goes. And you should be getting way more interested in how the hell they did that rather than trying to talk yourself and others out of that it can't, or into that it can't be done.
Yeah. Yeah. So coming back to authenticity is talking about me, and being an asshole is what? Because I think the two, you can feel like you're coming across as authentic because you're sharing how this other person or what this person did, and it is a true. It could be true. It could be a real conversation for you, but it could come across to the other person as being an asshole. So I want to distinguish the two there.
Yeah. So let me give you an example. So, and by the way, I'm talking about. This might seem like a really simple subject. If your listeners started to talk the way I'm about to create it with them, you would change your whole life. And I mean your whole life. I don't mean a little bit of it. I mean all of it. You would suddenly experience yourself as being empowered to handle anything. So authenticity is when you say to somebody, listen, you said X and that made me angry. Or you said Y and you offended me. Now, one of the things I've come to realize is that no one offends me without my permission. And I don't get angry actually at anything without my permission. So you'll notice if you look in your own life, there are certain people who you're a little more touchy with than others. So that is to say, somebody could say something and you would have nothing going on about it. Somebody else might say the exact same thing and you would lose your shit. How come? Well, the first thing you got to understand is, well, it's not what they're saying that's doing it. Why? Because if it was just the words, I'd just be pissed off at everybody all the time, anytime those words came out of their mouth, or something else at play.
Right.
So that is to say, I am saying when I'm pissed off and not. So that is, I'm actually choosing to be pissed off at you right now because I don't like what you said. But if they said it, I'd be fine with it. So it's not the words. So you start to realize that you are the generator. You create, you express your own upsets in life. And that doesn't give people carte blanche to just say and do whatever the hell they want. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you start to take responsibility for your own upset. So an example might be, and I'll use a workplace example because it's a real easy place to get pissed off. It's actually a real easy place to get pissed off and not say anything about it. And just harbor the resentment for 2 years until you're losing your mind and you need to get out of there and find a new job. But anyway, one way to communicate it would be, look, so first of all, I don't appreciate what you said, okay? But I'm not going to make you wrong for it. I'm not going to get upset about it because that's kind of, that would be me doing that to myself. But I do want you to know that that's inappropriate and it's not acceptable. And, it's not okay for you to talk to me in that way. Now, right there's no drama. It's no upset. I'm not losing my shit. I'm not blaming you for my getting upset. But I'm letting you know, here's what's acceptable. Here's what's not acceptable. And, if people spend a little more time thinking through their communications, you would find that even your upsets, you could handle them in a pretty down-to-earth and really thought-provoking way that diminishes, if does not completely extinguish, some of the really major upsets of your life. When you realize you'd never get upset without your own permission, like nobody's getting you anyway. Nobody's making you anyway. And if you examined yourself long enough and thought about it long enough and witnessed yourself long enough, you'd see you're a self-generating phenomenon. Nobody's doing shit to you without your permission.
Mm-hmm. And so what would it look like to be an asshole? Well, in that same scenario, you said X. So authenticity is talking about me and how it made me feel. You said X, and that's not acceptable to me. That seemed like what you said there. So if we take that same scenario and we're going to be an asshole, what would that look like? Maybe not like a big asshole, but just where it comes across as like, so we know the difference. Yeah,
it would be more like, you're ruining my life. You're constantly putting me in a bad mood. Like, I'm tired of people like you. You're a toxic human being. You're sucking the energy out of me. You're yeah. I mean, you're just barfing up on people and blaming them for how your life is.
So you did this to me, and that's why I am X.
Right, which is a cause and effect thing, right?
Cause and effect.
Right, but I mean, how do you know you're not pissed off because you had a donut this morning? How are you so sure it's that? You know what I mean? It could be anything. It could be any combination of things. So, I really, and it's been, and Andrew, it's been a journey for me to finally wrap my head around this, many years, to see that, man, I mean, look, I can be an asshole in an empty house. I don't even need people. I can literally lose my shit at the television.
Like what does that look like? Watching sports or
well, whatever, right? Like, oh, you're ruining my life, and I'm watching like flickering lights and listening to sound waves like hit my eardrum, and I'm emotionally all over the place. So So this, and by the way, I'm not certainly not the first person ever to come up with this as a notion or an idea. But if you read books by a book by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, or
great book.
Nelson Mandela's autobiography, what you'll see are people who realized that their emotional state was theirs, that it didn't belong to anybody else. And that they, like Viktor Frankl was just a beautiful example of it, like where his experience of being alive wasn't circumstantial. It's the guy who was in a concentration camp.
Yeah.
His experience of being alive, you got to get this to your bones. His experience, his emotional states, his thoughts, his mindset, his outlook, his moods, it was not given by his circumstances. He was the architect. He created his own emotional states in an environment that was, for the vast majority of the people who have ever lived would never have to deal with an environment like that. Yet somehow he was able to empower himself in the most heinous of circumstances. If anybody reads that book, if you're going to work and blaming your work for your miserable attitude or your whatever it is you're dealing with, you really got to check yourself a little and say, listen, man, I got to have this in my experience of this life because it's not circumstantial.
Right. And the example you're giving with Viktor Frankl is that is the worst. That is quite possibly one of the worst places to be, in Auschwitz, in a concentration camp in World War II during that time period. And he was able to rise up out of that situation. Right.
And it's not mental fortitude or there's a very simple thing at play. One of the things that I love to do, Andrew, is I love to give people really simple ideas that they can use. Not an idea that you can sit there and, ponder the universe with, but one you could turn around and use in your relationship or your work or your finances, or your relationship to your body or whatever. But you are a human being, right? Now, you'll notice there's no such thing called a dog being. There's not a tortoise being. There's not a dolphin being. There's not an emu being. There's not a giraffe being. Because they're just being what giraffes, emus, dogs, dolphins, and all other stuff would be. You're a human being. Now, the important part of that is the beingness of that. Now, being isn't some nebulous state. Being can be categorized in emotional states, ways of thinking, and physical experiences all coming together in a moment of time. Now, being what? Well, if you look in your own life, you'll see that in any given moment of time, if you check in with yourself, which is kind of tricky because we're mostly checked out, but if you check in with yourself, you'll see in any given moment of time, you are being something. So you might be being kind. You might be being distracted. You might be being angry. You might be being focused. But you're always being something. Most of it, you're not conscious of it. You don't notice it. You don't see it. What I say to people is you actually are always in the driver's seat of your own beingness. So that is the way that you be in life. You are the one that creates, generates, expresses that being. If there's an area of your life that isn't working, check out the way of being that you're expressing there. Like I might be being resentful. I might be being angry. I might be being frustrated. I might be being desperate. I might be being depressed. If you look at the way that you be in that area of life, you'll see that that is actually making no difference to the circumstances you're in. You might want to try some other way of being, because you are a human being and you have the capacity for just about any way of being that any other human being could express. You might want to try out observing your life and living your life from some new way of being.
So in any area of struggle, you should take a look at the way of being you are in that area of struggle. And there could be some clues there as to why you are struggling in that area.
All right. I mean, look, if you're going to work, okay, and you're saying this job's killing me, look at how you're being at work. Just look. Look at how you talk to people. Look at how you wake up to that job every day. There's a way of being. It's something like being resigned or, being desperate or being angry or being resentful. Uninterrupted. those ways of being are like a cancer to your happiness. Those ways of being will eat away at you. Everything that you encounter while you're at work will present itself through that filter, through that way of being. So if I'm going to work and I'm being resentful, or if your relationship with your mom or your dad is fundamentally based in your resentment of them, everything they say, everything they do is coming at you through that resentment, through your way of being. You pick up on cues, things they say that confirm and justify your resentment until the point where you start to say, hold on, what if it's me? What if what I'm doing right now is coming at me in such a way, but I keep coming at it in the same way, therefore I'm getting the same results? Because look, the reality is, and sometimes this is a shock to people when I say this, you know, like when I say stuff like your parents have friends, right? They can't, like, what the hell? What do you mean? Like, how could anybody like that person? My dad's a, you know, bully, and you'll notice you're stuck in a certain way of being with the people in your life or your job. If you want to shift it, and by the way, that gives you a certain way of looking at things and a certain way of engaging with things, whatever way of being you're in. If you came at that from another way of being, like, I don't know, being curious, being vulnerable, being open, being compassionate, being understanding, being positive, being engaged, you'll see that that way of being opens up other potentials or other possibilities that previously just didn't seem to be there. So what you're essentially doing is shifting the way that you see things. And that's when you can become this like real master of your own experience, and this is how I live. I mean, I'm constantly shifting my own ways of being so that what's in front of me opens itself up rather than struggling with what's in front of me. I'm more interested in how to have it shift and have life be malleable and something that I can play with rather than something that's happening to me.
Okay. So let's take the relationship. I think many of the listeners can relate with this. If maybe I change the way I'm being in my relationship and I switch from resentful to, let's say, gratitude. Obviously, a more proactive approach to improving that relationship. But what point would you draw that line where, you know, this relationship isn't working and I keep having to change my state of being to gratitude? And, you know, where would I draw that line? Like, hey, this relationship's not working. I'm coming from gratitude, and am I just lying to myself now?
No, see, the problem is fundamentally in relationships, we're in them to see what we're getting out of them. I mean, you're fucked right away, right? Because they're doing that too. Right. So everybody's screwed here, right? We're all coming at it with like, what are you doing for me, right? And if you go back to what I said earlier, nobody can make you feel any way without your permission. So there's a couple of paradigm shifts that really had to happen for me in relationships. One, and this happened for me just quite beautifully in my relationship with my mom. I realized that I'd spent, you know, like 3 decades of my life looking to her for what I needed. I always came up short. Like, I never came up with what I thought I needed. It always seemed like she either failed me or actively screwed my life over. And I noticed that I was in this mode of judgment. Like, I was just, whatever she did, I just judged it. It was kind of like, just when I turned 40, actually, I thought, am I going to keep going like this? Am I going to be another guy who doesn't get along with his mom or his dad or his whatever, or am I going to find a way for this to work? Right. And I gave up that she had to do anything. All right. So I gave up, like, all right, she doesn't have to do anything. I just need, all the thing I need from her is just to be my mom. Right. All the stuff that she does that I've got an opinion about and I don't like, you know, because clearly I'm the judge and the jury and everything that I see is the truth. So that's how that's going to go. So I gave up the idea that she had to change. And I took on the notion, well, if I took off the table being judgmental and resentful. And I put on the table being loving. Like, this is just what I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be a loving man. And instant, my relationship changed and never went back. Like, never went back. I realized that it was up to me. If I want love in my life, I am the one that needs to express that and stop looking for it. Because love is a self-expression. You're not a receiver for love, you're a broadcaster. What do I mean by that? I mean, and by the way, this is the same with all ways of being, right? You're expressive of them. But if somebody just walked up to you in the street and said, I love you, you would run, right? You'd be like, oh my God, right? Yet, if somebody else in your life says, I love you, you experience love, like you'll physiologically, emotionally, psychologically, neurologically, like you'll fire up, okay? The first thing you got to get about that is you're doing that. You're doing that. How do I know that? Because you're the gatekeeper of whether you experience that or not. Somebody might say, I love you. You get lit up like a Christmas tree. Somebody else might say, I love you. You get freaked out and run for the hills, right? If you go on your second date with somebody and you're like, this is going well. And they say, yeah, for me too. I think I love you. You'd be like, what? Right?
Right.
Because you're not willing to let yourself experience that with that person. So you'll retreat.
Right.
So it really is about realizing, look, in your relationships, it's an opportunity to express yourself until you're no longer willing to do that. And if you're no longer willing to express yourself in a relationship, then you should take yourself out of it and call it for what it is. But not blame the other person, actually take responsibility for, I'm no longer willing to express myself here. I'm no longer willing to be who I said I would be here. But, the unfortunate news for people is I'll use the example of love relationships, but we often think that the key to successful love is just to change the personnel. And one of the things you'll realize at some point is that you can change the personnel all you like, but it's still you. It's kind of like, constantly moving to new towns and states. You get over the initial rush of having made the change, and then it settles down and you realize it's still you. So you need another change. So I would say to people, you got to get way more interested in you, your hang-ups, what's in the way, your triggers, because they're your triggers. You don't got to stop getting other people on the hook for how you're triggered. Now, having said all of that, at some point, there might be things that are just unworkable, right? So you might be in a relationship with somebody who's violent, maybe in a relationship with somebody who's, abusing drugs or alcohol, or just engaging in behavior that's just not workable. And I don't mean stuff like, well, they're always telling me to pick up my wet towel off the bathroom floor. That does not constitute a relationship crisis. That's like, pick your effing towel up, But those things can become relationship crises. It's kind of like, you're always telling me what to do.
Yeah.
Right. And and you'll notice, by the way, if you do have a trigger for that, like being told what to do, that goes way back to your childhood. That's got nothing to do with the person you're in a relationship with. You are hung up, period, about being told what to do. In fact, when anybody says things to you, you hear it in terms of being told what to do rather than somebody just suggesting something.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. I think that helps provide clarity on just what we're willing to put up with and what we need to work on in our relationship. Because I think that you got to distinguish that. Otherwise, we could just be taking, and we're not, making the decision that, okay, I'm not, getting my needs met here. This is relationship needs to, it's not working. Well, good. Let us dive into the knowledge round. Just going to ask you a few more rapid fire questions here in this interview. So Gary, are you ready for the knowledge round?
Let's go for it.
So you might be wondering, why would I ever invest in a coach? I've never done anything like that before. Well, it's going to shorten your learning curve and save you the time that it would take to achieve your goal. You can avoid making mistakes that you would otherwise make. You'll get more results because everything will be tailored to your specific needs and challenges. The coach will hold you accountable so you can't procrastinate, so you can't be lazy, so you can't say, I didn't have the time. You'll be challenged and pushed harder than you've ever been pushed. You'll have conversations so powerful that you'll feel more energized, alive, and confident and certain about the goals that you have in front of you and where you want to go. Most importantly, where you want to be. You'll go farther than you've ever gone before when you have a coach. If you want to learn more about our high performance men's coaching program, go to kfmcoach.com. Again, that's kfmcoach.com to learn more about our high performance men's coaching program. You have got to understand that every successful person in the world invests in coaching to go from good to great. And if you're already a high achiever, then how much more could you achieve if you had a high performance men's coach at your side to push you even further? Go to kfmcoach.com to learn more and apply for our high performance men's coaching program. Again, that's kfmcoach.com. Welcome to the Knowledge Round, where the guests will be asked rapid fire questions to give the audience invaluable pieces of wisdom to help transform their lives. Starting in 3, 2, 1, showtime. All right, let's dive in. Gary, what advice would you give to someone who's feeling really lost and unsure of their purpose?
Yeah, so I would say to you, there's two things. One, if you've been lost for a while, you should embrace the notion that the whole idea of this is that you remain lost and that somehow you're avoiding taking any action. Okay, so that's the first thing you got to take on. There's a real simple way to uncover your purpose, okay? And people have made lots and lots and lots and lots of money out of making this complex. But if you were to take two bits of paper, one was titled wants and one was titled needs, and you filled those pieces of paper up with everything you could think of. What are your wants? Well, I want a Lamborghini. Well, I want nice pants. Well, I want this amount of money in the bank. Well, I want what do I need? I need to eat. I need to sleep. I need to have somebody in my life that I love. And you'll list all your wants and all your needs until you're exhausted by it. And if you look at what's on those pieces of paper and you say to yourself, okay, let's say I have all that. What would I do with my life? What would it be about? And right there's your purpose.
Very powerful. What do you think, Gary, is holding most men back from becoming stronger, grounded men today?
I think we've become a little too fascinated with ourselves, number one. I think if you really want to empower yourself, make your life about others, be of service. And I mean in very small ways, like, go into the 7-Eleven and be of service to the guy behind the counter. I mean, going to work and be of service to your boss, be of service to your children. I don't mean be a doormat. I mean be of service, like be someone with, like a sense of what it is to embrace humility and to embrace integrity and to be someone. And by the way, often we don't want to do that because we feel as if we'll miss out on something. But you will know yourself in the way that you be of service to others. There's a real grace and humanity in being. And by the way, you'll notice the greatest human beings in history were the ones who lived in service to others.
Yeah, very good. And Gary, what have been 3 of your most influential books that have helped you on your journey, and briefly, why?
Yeah. Well, I would definitely say Man's Search for Meaning was pivotal for me because it made me realize that I was not circumstantial. And that's not like knowledge. There's like a visceral shift that happened with me when I realized that. Like, I realized I was not defined by the weather. Like, the weather's the weather, and then there's how I am about that. There's my wife is my wife, and there's how I am about that. There's my friend who's my friend, and there's how I am about that, and my job and my finances and all that kind of stuff. So Man's Search for Meaning. Another one is I wouldn't even call it a book. It's more like, it's a masterpiece. It's so complex. I'm still wrestling with it 5 years after first reading it, which is Martin Heidegger's Being and Time, which to me is like the most complex, courageous, and authentic look at what it is to be a human being. But again, I mean, it's one of those books you could take a page and study it for 2 years, right? I mean, just a page.
Yeah.
Because of its implication. And I would say, you know, one that kind of comes out of left field is Of Mice and Men. It was, you know, that book, like, really, I was immersed in that book. I read that book so many times. Why it was so powerful for me was, like, it demonstrated the humanity and but also, like, the triumph of the human spirit, like what human beings can overcome. And I read that book at a time in my life and I really felt weighed down. And so it was a great way to kind of just escape to another time. And I found so much joy, so much courage in the pages of that book.
Very good. I want to check out some of those books. I'm putting them on my wish list now. And Gary, what would you tell your 25-year-old self if you had 60 seconds with him? If you can imagine where you were in your life, your career, your relationships, and if you had 60 seconds with 25-year-old Gary, what would you tell him?
Don't panic. And I really mean that. Like, if you're 25 years old and you're listening to this right now, don't panic. Look at your actions. What are you doing? In what way is today are you forward in the game? In what way is today representative of the life you would say you're after? And don't panic. It really isn't like this is not a race. It's not even a journey. It's like every day you have an opportunity to express yourself. Who are you going to be today? Go ahead.
I like that. Every day you have an opportunity to express yourself. I like that a lot. And now, Gary, if you had to sum it up, even if you have to look at some of the main points you've shared today on this interview, what would you say is your philosophy on life and success?
2 things. Do what you said you would do, even when every fiber of your body is screaming no. And always set the bar higher than you think is possible. Now, if you take those 2 things together, if I set the bar higher than I think is possible, and then I do what I said I would do, it's a pretty awesome life.
Yeah. How often would you say to set the bar higher? Is that a weekly? Is that a monthly? Is that a yearly?
Whenever it presents it, I mean, like I do it every day. I mean, it's just there's not a day when I'm always like going beyond what I think I can do. Like, you know, I just turned 51. I've taken soccer up again. Right?
Yeah.
I haven't played soccer. I used to be really competitive, played pretty decent level.
Great.
I haven't played soccer in over a dozen years. I'm playing again. I'm getting into shape. I took on running every day, right? I hate running. Like, I've got this thing for running. Like, the only time I want to run is if I'm getting chased. There's not a lot of occasion for that these days, but still. But, you know, I'm out to interrupt the drift. And that is one of my favorite little catchphrases is interrupt the drift, interrupt the drift, interrupt the drift. There's a drift of me. Like, there's a way that I want this to kind of just go by default. I'm constantly catching it, moving it, shifting it, getting any discomfort, handling life there, interacting with life there, playing with life there, because that's where the living's at, where I'm getting tested and stretched and my potential is, and it's enlivening and it's vibrant and it's, you know, it's filled with possibility. And, you know, there's no other way to live. There's no safe way for you to do this shit. You got to get out there on the skinny branches of this thing and dance in the wind.
Very beautiful. And Gary, what's the first thing you want the audience to do once we end here to make this really worth your time? And if 1,000 guys would go and do this one thing, what is that?
I would say take one area of your life, something you know you should be doing, right? Something you just know you should be doing. Get up off your seat and go do it. So if it's like, you know, you should be going to the gym, go do it. Like, do it right now. Like, shut your computer down, get up, get your gear, get in the car and go. Or if you need to call somebody up and apologize, like, again, stop this thing, get your phone out, find that person and apologize to them and do it right now. And any one of a number of things, if it's your finances, your body, your love life, your career, your business, like, do that thing right now that you know that you've told yourself, I need to get that done, and you haven't done it. Do it right now. And when you've done it, notice the difference it makes with you. Notice like that sense of like satisfaction, that way of being, like being accomplished or being happy or being joyful, because it's in those domains that you actually start to express and stretch yourself.
Yeah. And there it is. Shall we all go and do what we must do right now? I like that. And Gary, I'm wondering for yourself, like, what's exciting you? Like, what's getting you out of bed in the morning? What's happening in the present? Like, what's really driving you?
Well, right now I'm writing the second book, right? And I've been writing courses for people, and
yeah.
But nothing inspires me more than being a dad. I love being a dad. I've got 3 little boys. My oldest is 12. My youngest is 3. I just love being a dad. And I love being the kind of dad that I get to be, which is the kind of dad that's up to something in the world, that's up to some big things. Like, I got a big vision. It's not about realizing on my vision. It's about that I get to live that vision. I get to live it. And I got to live that vision when it didn't pay me anything, when it was a struggle and it was hard. But I got great joy in living that vision, like I get great joy out of living that vision right now.
Yeah.
So it's the combination of being somebody who's up to something in the world, but not with the intention of getting there. Like, I'm just up to something.
Yeah. And
being the kind of dad who does that. I mean, it's just this beautiful combination for me.
So you're a man on a purpose. Like, you wake up, there's a purpose for living. You're living with meaning.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like, look, I just want to make a difference, and I'm going to turn myself inside out to make that difference, including interrupt all my own patterns and BS, because making that difference, when it's all said and done, that's what I'll be left with. I won't be left with my bank account or a nice car or any of that stuff. I'll be left with, what difference did I make? And that's all I'm interested in.
Wow, what a fantastic interview, Gary. I was not sure what to expect when I saw you on the calendar here, and this has really been a great interview. You've been delivering massive value here to my audience, and for the listeners here, go to Amazon and Unfuck Yourself is the book. Get out of your head and into your life. You put that in Google, go to Amazon. Gary John Bishop is the author name there. Also, his website is simply Gary John Bishop. Just throw it in Google, pops right up #1, and you can see all the courses that he's got. Can you give us any info about your second book, or is it all private?
Well, the only thing I'll say to you is, if you've ever had those times in your life when it seems to be going pretty well, yet you somehow throw a fucking hand grenade in it, that's what it's about. It's about, why do we do that? Why do we seem to get it to work? And then there's times when we'll just like blow it, like a relationship's going great with somebody, and then there's that thing we know we probably shouldn't say, but out it comes. Or, I pay off all my debt, and then I rack it all up again, or I lose weight, and then I put it all back on. Like, what's that really all about? And how do I put an end to some of that really destructive behavior? Yeah.
It's like how to unfuck yourself and stay that way.
The way I look at it more is like, each of us, we're very personality driven, and there's a connection between your personality and your life circumstances. And if you could fully understand what that connection is, you could really change your life in a really profound way.
And is there an estimated ETA on this second book?
It'll be out next year. It'll be a 2019 book. I'm really excited. I mean, I've kind of got, if I look at it right now, I mean, I've written the first draft, but there'll probably be about 30 drafts of this thing. But I've written the first draft. And one of the things that's really important to me, Andrew, is my ideas, my concepts, the things that I want people to get. I keep them simple. My books are more about provoking you to think, not providing you with concepts and stuff. It's more like giving you real world answers that you can use. So the big challenge for me is, it's not what to write, it's what not to write.
Yeah. That's great. All right. We'll be on the lookout for your second book in 2019. But in the meantime, we've got an amazing book live and available on Amazon. We'll check that out. And then also your website, Gary John Bishop. Gary, thank you so much for coming on the show, being vulnerable, sharing your truth, and giving us invaluable wisdom today.
Awesome, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Knowledge for Men podcast. Hundreds of interviews and millions of downloads later, we're continuing to build an international movement, and we're just getting started. So if you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and leave a helpful review in iTunes, because it really helps the podcast grow so we can impact even more men in the world who need this. Guys, this is all about living with purpose, where every day you only do things that matter to you. You wake up, live with purpose, and take massive action towards the life you want. And always remember, love the life you have while creating the life of your dreams. Go to kfmfree.com to get a surprise bonus I've made for my listeners. Again, that's kfmfree.com for something that's changed my life, and I'm offering it to you for free. Also, check out my Amazon best-selling books that I've written for you to help you crush life at kfmauthor.com. Again, that's kfmauthor.com to see all the books I've created to help you break through in life. This is your host, Andrew Farabee, founder of Knowledge